Kyle, how are you, friend?
Well, how are you, Hitchin and Frost?
Are you headbanging right now? You got to headbang when you listen to
Oh,
this.
absolutely. It's a
Attaboy.
little early in the morning, but I've had my coffee.
Were
So,
you
I'm ready to bang heads.
Were you aware that you were the Jaguar record holder at tight end when it came to receptions and yards, and and that mark was going to fall? As Evan Ingram piled up numbers last year.
Yeah, actually, I was made aware of that. I mean,
Okay.
back when I had that season of 64 catches back in 2000, I know Pete Mitchell had some very productive years prior to my being here, and Pete and I are good friends, and we remain in touch to this day, and actually had a year in common here in Jacksonville in 2002. But I think he had some 50-some catch seasons, so I was able to get that one with 64, and that was a lot of fun. It was definitely my most productive season as a Jaguar, and but all records are made to fall, except it seems like Jerry Rice's. His are far and away above everybody. It's crazy when you look at his numbers, but yeah, I mean that was a record that I figured eventually would fall, and I was happy to see it happen because really it seems to me, I mean obviously I'm biased being a tight end, but the Jaguars' run last year seemed to have coincided with Evan Ingram's run. It really does. I mean the way he put pressure on the defense just opened up everything else around the field. And I've said that for years, and you guys already know it. If you can get a tight end that pressures the middle of the field and is even as athletic as Evan and can be outside on the edge, putting pressure out there, what do you do with him? You put a corner on him, he's too small. Safety, he can run. I mean, really, he can run by safeties and linebackers. So he presents tremendous matchup problems.
21 years you held the record. That's a pretty good run, Kyle.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
And for a guy that people were calling a bust when I was in New York, I was able to, I guess, somewhat redeem myself down here, and that's very much thanks to Tom Coughlin. He had a lot of faith in me, a lot of belief in me. I actually just started reading his book recently. I didn't read it because, it was him as a New York Giants coach on the front, and that was just a very sore subject to me since the very last game I played in was the Super Bowl where he beat us. And so I'm finally picking up the desire to look at it, and it brings back a lot of memories. A lot of guys giving testimony to the things we all know about Coach.
Hey, Kyle, the boys on Twitter want to know what's worse, first day of training camp or the bar exam, both coming up today.
Ooh, that's interesting that those two would coincidentally fall on the same day. Well, one of them is physical and mental torture, and the other one is purely mental, psychological torture.
Yeah.
Both are pretty arduous, though. At least one of them only lasts for, 2 days. I believe it still lasts for 2 days, 2 full days of testing.
Oh.
Pretty rough, but really, I mean, by the time you get to that day, you're kind of relieved you're there because the previous 3 months were spent in a hole studying the entire time. So, in many respects, though, not unlike each other. A ton of preparation necessary to be successful, and that's what you're doing right now. You've already dialed in your preparation, hopefully, in the preceding 3 to 4 months, and now this is the final touches that you're going to put on the preparation before you go into the season.
Kyle, I bet you'd love to have played for Doug Peterson. I mean, he's tight end friendly, right? I mean, he had a great tight end, Zach Ertz. They went ahead and drafted a Dallas Goedert. They got a lot of production last year out of Evan Ingram. Round 2, they go to, hey, where do you know? Your old stomping grounds in Penn State. Tight end Britton Strange, who you probably know more about than most. So, a tight end friendly system, right? And an important position in the Jaguars' offense.
It sure is, Frost. Now you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he's an offense first guy. I mean, he understands obviously the importance of defense and how important that is to have a solid defense to win in the NFL. But he's always thinking about offense. He's always thinking about how to get his athletes the ball in space. And you can see his creativity, obviously, and his cool under fire. I mean, I really admire that as well. He just seems really unfazed and unflappable. I mean, you coach in Philly I've told people down here when they were asking last year when things were not going well, they're like, oh, do you think we got the right guy? What's going on? And, when it was not going very well, I said, listen, we've got the right coach and we've got the right quarterback. And with those two things, you can go far in this league. And it's just a lot of fun watching how he puts the guys out there and takes advantage of their skill sets.
What I love about Jacksonville, Kyle, I want your thoughts. A lot of you guys end up staying here, hanging out here. I mean, you played in New England, like you mentioned, but you came back here. And there's a lot of dudes who like to make their home here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I know that you've remained a big fan of the Jaguars as well going forward.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, this is a good place to stay and a good place to raise a family. I'm a bigger fan of this area in November through May than I am July through October.
It's a little warm out there. Yeah.
Ooh, it's toasty. I go outside and I think, man, how did we used to do this?
I don't know.
Going out twice a day and this stuff. Now, thankfully, they have these facilities now that keep them a little cooler. And, I mean, I think there's obviously a need if you're going to be competing in that kind of climate to go out and train in it, but maybe not every single day, every single practice. I mean, that can be really depleting. It was that was challenging, man. I tell you, going out on days like this and getting that kind of work done with all that equipment on.
Hit on something. You've remained a football fan and a Jaguars fan, Colin. I'm sure the family and that kind of thing is, in addition to all your ties as alumni, keep you into that. Tell me the difference between being a player in the NFL and then kind of graduating to the fan side. It's just such a unique group of guys who have actually played in the league who then, by proxy and as they go on become like, and there's a difference in fans and some are more intense than others, and you seem to kind of lean toward that end and when it comes to interest.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. Obviously we are absolutely. I tell people who are fans in this area that come up and say, "Oh, I mean, we still are able to maintain a level of involvement with the team, thankfully, because the team, the organization does a very good job of keeping us in the loop and keeping us involved through the Jaguars Alumni Association and things like that." But I mean, I tell fans, I'm just like you. I'm frustrated when they lose. I'm happy when they win. Now, obviously, we have a little more insight than the average fan. We're seeing the game a little bit differently, and sometimes it's fun for fans to watch with us. We get invited to watch parties around town, and we can kind of explain some of the reasons for either their success or their lack of success, because we can see it from another perspective. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited just like the fans are here in this area, and I have conversations very often at the grocery store, wherever it may be. It's like, hey, we got a reason to hope. Well, we can, I always sort of give the little asterisk, hey, we got to stay healthy. That's critical every single season. You see the teams that are there at the end are the ones who, by and large, stay healthy across the board with their key players. But yeah, I mean, like fandom, I'm just right there at fandom with everybody else.
We've gone from hope to expectation. Now, I was curious, Kyle, you started in the league in, 95?
Mm-hmm.
I went to Stevens Point, Wisconsin that year with TC, and now you were with the Jets then. We had two-a-day. The boys went through two-a-days. There was a heat wave, unprecedented heat wave up there. They were talking about cows dying. There was no air conditioning in the dorms that the media stayed in. Coughlin tried to snuff us out of there. But we stayed strong, Kyle. But I was wondering if you think,
tough.
Yeah. But you think back to what in '95, we were still there. You guys still had to get after it and it's not like that today. It's a lot different. Obviously, there's no two-a-days. There's no
hardly any hitting.
Yeah, it's a much different world now in the National Football League. But can you give me a story from one of the early training camps that you went through with either heat or coaching or
maybe
my
fist
God,
fight?
I'm about to die here. I can't go on.
Oh, man. I mean, I could tell you a bunch of stories, though. I mean, I was an exercise physiology and nutrition major in college, though, and I was such a huge proponent for, or I was such an opponent, really, of why we did training camp the way we did even then. I mean, it was such a holdover to the days when guys came back out of shape. They had jobs as teachers and stockbrokers in the offseason. They were smoking cigarettes when they got back. They used that to get them in shape. But nowadays, the athletes show up to camp in the best shape of their life, and then to beat them up and break them down like that, I kind of always thought it was a little bit foolish. But I mean, actually, that was that particular summer, '95, was a heat wave really all over the Midwest and Northeast.
Yeah.
So even up in New York, it was unusually hot. I mean, every day climbing into the 90s, high humidity, you name it, and I think that's one of the reasons the Jaguars didn't go up there anymore. They're like, well, if we're going up there to get out of the hot weather,
right.
It was just as hot, if not hotter, on some days, and it wasn't Jacksonville. But that particular year, Rich Kotite was the coach in New York.
Oh, God.
I know. He was a new coach. So we started camp like 2 weeks early, mid-July. Everyone else was starting late July. We started mid-July. So it was just an unbearably long camp. And I remember Pat Terrell, he was a safety from Notre Dame.
Sure.
I caught a ball over the middle of the seam, and I guess it was kind of his little welcome to the NFL type of thing. He took a cheap shot on me, and we ended up in a little scrum there. And this was in preseason. I think it might even have been the day I signed my contract. Some of those veteran guys back in that era, that it was a different era mentally as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much of this stuff goes on, but
you try to knock a little cash out of your pocket, is what you're saying.
Exactly, is what he was trying to do. He knock some green out so you can get all the defensive guys. It's just a little bit of a welcome to the NFL, a little bit of saying like, yeah, you better earn that money.
What was it like going from Kotite? I don't want you to disparage the guy, but you went from Kotite to Parcells and Coughlin. I was just, was it noticeable? I mean, is that as to the players? Is it like, holy cow?
Oh, it was a night and day. I mean, no, again, not necessarily disparaging Kotite. Yeah. Good guy. He was a good tight end coach, good offensive coordinator. Just had a tough time when he was, leading the organization up there. But for me, it was refreshing because it was a return to what I was used to. I had a tough former ex-Marine in high school who was a great wrestling coach. He made the Pennsylvania State High School Hall of Fame for wrestling and football. And then so he was in the mold of a Paterno and Coughlin and Parcells. And then, and then I had Joe Paterno in college, which was, again, tough, strict, disciplinarian, all about the team, team first mentality. So playing for Kotite I was out of sorts. I mean, it was very different than those experiences of playing for those first two coaches. So when we got Parcells in, I was like, oh man, this guy is tough. Clearly, I mean, he was tough from day one. But to me, it was a welcome.
Yeah, you won
addition.
too.
We won. I mean, you knew exactly where you stood. Everything was very black and white. Everything was scripted to the minute, just like it was. I mean, Coughlin and Belichick, actually, they kind of modeled their schedules after Parcells because they were both, disciples of his, coaching under him with the Giants. So very much peas in a pod, other than personalities, obviously.
Right.
All right, last question with former Jaguars tight end Kyle Brady. Every time we have him on, I say we should have him on more. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Kyle. But, obviously this Jaguars team is going to go into this season with a lot different expectation, and inevitably that comes to be noticed internally, right? When you have a higher ceiling than at least what you thought you had. So, and you experienced this, right? Over your vast career, you had years where, oh my gosh, we're not going to be good this year. And then you've had years where you were expected to be a Super Bowl contender. Just what is that difference like for players? Is it a big difference, or you kind of hand your business the same way no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the team, really, and the maturity of the team. The team really should be, if they've got the proper leadership, should be viewing every season as, hey, whatever we are going to go out and get this year, we've got to earn, no matter what other people's expectations are of you. Now, sometimes it's a little more fun in some respects to have a season like last year where people really aren't expecting much from you, and you're like, really, I mean, they're dwelling almost in the basement by halfway through the season. And to have that kind of run and to build that kind of momentum so quickly, that's a lot of fun. I mean, there can be obviously very different pressures when you're the big dog and when you're expected to have success, and everyone's kind of gunning for you. I mean, I can tell you that the season I did spend with the Patriots that year, we were undefeated. I mean, in November, December, we were playing teams that weren't playoff bound, and they were coming out and giving us Super Bowl playoff type of effort. I mean, they wanted to knock off the heavyweight champ. People were saying this might be one of the best teams in the history of the NFL. Well, let's measure ourselves against them, even if we're not having any exciting conclusion to this season by going to playing into January. So it took a tremendous amount of effort. And I think the Jaguars, their leadership will be tested in that they're going to get a much better field of opponents this year. That's, just how it works, with scheduling in the NFL. But another thing is people are now aware, like, these guys are good. You can't go in assuming that you're just going to chalk this one up as a W. I think there's going to be a higher level of preparedness and even mental awareness of, we're playing a good team with talented players. So they got to be ready to dial up their intensity likewise.
Well, our best to you and your family. I know those beautiful little girls of yours are growing up, so.
Oh, yeah, they're growing like weeds, going fast.
Good luck with that, and it's always good to catch up with you, man. We'd love to talk to you again. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, y'all as well. Take care.
Thank you, Kyle.
There he goes. One of the best, Kyle Brady's.
Obviously, the number 80 we should have answered last week.